Week after week, the Cape Crusader copes with the tricky traps of vicious villains. Will the time arrive when the Cape crime fighters come too close to the jaws of death?
Holy metronome, what a feat! Punch to the player piano roll.
Watch Batman in color on ABC.
Welcome back, citizens, to an all-new episode of the Batcave podcast. It's your old bat chum, John S. Drew here, and we're back once again with another look at some of the best of Batman 66 as we prepare for the release on November 11th of the DVDs and Blu-ray sets. And joining me once again for this look at Batman 66 is Dan Greenfield from 13thdimension.com. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Bat John.
Hey, how are you? So today we're going to be taking a look at the Bat Traps. No Batman series is worth its salt if it doesn't have some good Bat Traps, some cliffhangers to end part ones on, which is kind of why, like, sometimes the third season was a little disappointing because you didn't really get a Bat Trap, did you?
No, I agree. Before we get started, though, I do want to mention that we have our third day of contest. We've been giving out prizes. On day one, we had the Cesar Romero Joker bobblehead, and day two, we had the Batman 66 hardcover. Today, it's a twofer. The prizes become a little more elaborate as we go on through the week. Bob Greenberg's Batman Encyclopedia and Jim Beard's 14 Miles to Gotham. Jim Beard, who we're also profiling this week at 13th Dimension as one of our major fans who've kind of kept the Bat Signal lit over the last 45, 50 years with the show. But the prize winner, who we'll announce at the end of the show, will get some good reading material, both of those books.
Yeah, no, they're both great resources in terms of Bat lore, and then also in Jim's case with Gotham City 14 Miles, just some great commentary on the series.
Yep, I have them both on my shelf.
So Bat Traps, let's get started talking about this here, and I'm going to get things rolling right off the bat. When it comes to Bat Traps, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, that there are two types of bat traps. There are the elaborate, huge death traps that you wonder if the villain spent so much money putting this together, why didn't they just simply shoot Batman or save their money or what have you? And then there are the ones that I call the bat cliffhangers or the bat traps of convenience. Oh, we caught Batman, throw him over a cliff or something, just something to that effect. It's whatever was on hand at the time. Or in some cases, it wasn't even what was on hand. It was because Batman and Robin got themselves into a situation, or Bruce Wayne got himself into a situation. My first bat trap is right off the bat from the very first episode where we see Robin, and because to me, that's pretty horrific for 1960s television, is Robin bound on an operating table as the Riddler starts closing a vice grip on the kid's head. That is freaky.
Yeah, that's certainly an indication of those earlier episodes had a little bit more darkness to them than the later episodes. And it's true. It's like the idea is like, oh my God, this is crazy. Robin's head's going to be burst with a vice. But of course, the kicker is you find out that's actually not even the case at all. It's a case where it's not even really a death trap. You as the viewer are led to believe that it is.
Yes, you are. That's true. Which I always thought was odd because when we get back to it the next day, Riddler hasn't even thought about taking the mask off Robin.
Right.
Which I thought was odd.
Yeah, that actually didn't come up nearly as much as you would think that it would, the idea of unveiling Batman. I mean, some villains were obsessed with the idea of revealing Batman's name. And it's true because, especially in that episode with the whole idea that Batman is being sued by the Riddler, and he's going to have to reveal his identity, and yet he's got Robin in his grasp, and he could reveal his identity. And that goes to the whole logic of the show always being cockeyed to begin with. But it's true that there was always the issue with two things. Why don't you just take off their masks? Why don't you just shoot them with a gun? And they always danced around that for the convenience of being elaborate. And that's, that actually goes to, and I'm giving one of mine away, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but that's also the Bill Finger approach, because Bill Finger was always big on those elaborate, in the comics, the oversized props, the big prop, the thing that the larger than life aspect of it, that the TV producers actually, of course they were tweaking it, but they also were celebrating it at the same time. And that's what made it fun.
So why don't you talk about your first Bat Trap, though?
Well, my all-time favorite actually is not really one trap. It's actually a whole half of an episode. The first Catwoman episode, the Perfect Crime, Better Luck Next Time, I think is the full title between the two shows,
right,
is my all-time favorite episode of the show. And I could talk about that episode going on and why it's my favorite, and from Julie Newmar on down. But specific to this, talking about the trap, is that whole sequence, the second half of that episode, or the last 10 minutes or whatever it is, where Batman and Robin are basically being put through their paces. And it bleeds over into the second half. It starts out, you've got the closing doors with the spikes, you've got the little bat bomb thing, you've got the Lady or the Tiger, and then you have Robin over the pit of tigers, and you've got that music too. They later used for many of their traps that they introduced in this episode, which was a great menacing sound. Unfortunately, it's not available on the soundtracks that you can find out there, but it's a great sound clip. And the just that whole, it's classic Catwoman. She's toying with them. She's playing with them. She's, it is really cat and mouse. And so it fits really well with the episode. It's inventive. It's dramatic. They actually tried to do it again later, a different version of it where she traps them again and she puts them through a hot foot and
right,
this, that, and the other thing. But this episode in particular, I see that whole sequence going into the fact when he has to kind of get away from the tiger and he has to scale the wall and he's got to put the sound thing so the tiger backs off. I think that whole sequence is absolutely tremendous.
It's also interesting because it's the first time Batman and Robin, if I'm not mistaken, are separated. And because of it, Robin's not there for Batman to explain how he's going to get them out of it. So Bill Dozier has to narrate the whole thing.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Although I don't think it's the first time they're separated, because in the first episode, Robin's the one in the death trap.
That's true.
Yeah, and there are a couple of cases. But yes, there is a lot of narration. One of the reasons there's a Robin to begin with was the Batman needed someone to talk to. And so, yeah, there is a lot of narration. It's like, oh, what is he doing now? And, oh, he's got to turn the just the right frequency or burst the tiger's head or whatever it is. But yes, you're right. It's that stentorian tone of Bill Dozier, which always adds something to me anyway.
For my second choice, I'm going to have to, and it's funny because you mentioned, getting the opportunity to unmask them. My next one is from probably one of my all-time favorite episodes, The Joker is Wild, in which Batman and Robin are captured by the Joker on live TV, and he just moves towards them to pull the masks away. Now, many people may say getting out of it was a bit of a just simplicity of throwing down the bat gas, but still, just the idea that it's like, I've got you and I've got live television. He could have just pulled out a gun, but no, even better, let me reveal who they are.
Yeah, that terrified me as a kid. I remember thinking, oh my God, it's all over. And you know that they're going to get out of it, or you assume that they will, but the idea of being revealed, the idea of that is a frightening idea, and being exposed like that. I think it's not only for Batman and Robin. There's also something Freudian about it, to put on my amateur psychologist's hat. But it's also why I picked out the Figures Toy Company has all of those, the Mego style Batman 66 figures, and I made a point when they put out all those variants recently of getting the Pagliacci Joker because of that scene and because of that episode. Which was also based on a comic book story, The
Yep.
Joker's Utility Belt. And we talked about in a previous episode, gadgets. The idea of a Joker utility belt is also a great idea, especially with the streamers the streamers that would tie them up like they did. But yeah, I think you're right. It's a very low, to use a phrase of the time, very lo-fi version of a trap, but it's also very effective.
So what is your next choice?
Going back to Bill Finger, because I think he co-wrote the episode, was the Clock King gigantic hourglass. That is right. I mean, that's a classic 1950s Dick Sprang drawn, Bill Finger written type of a story with the idea of them in this gigantic hourglass. And I remember, again, the same thing, that the dramatic element of them being drowned in sand from an hourglass, and then how they have to get out of it. And it's great visually. It's got the right element of menace where you think that, boy, this is a tough one. And I just think that it's really effective and a tremendous amount of fun, which is, of course, the best combination when you're talking about this show.
Yeah, I agree. Out of all those big as life death traps that they did, I always found also as the claustrophobic in me, just the whole idea freaks me out.
Scary.
Yeah, absolutely. My final one is I'm the odd one here. I'm like, all my traps are something like twists on it instead of just being straight out, we built something or other. I loved in the first Mad Hatter story, we have the bat death trap that's never really used as a death trap, at least in terms of the cliffhanger. Mad Hatter shows this whole, machine here, this long conveyor belt that tears and rips apart, the fabrics and such, and it would do the same to Batman and Robin's flesh. And then we get to the end of the episode, and what do we have? We have Batman instead being, cast into plaster of Paris. And it's like, wait a minute, you showed us this great trap, and we didn't use it. I mean, briefly we will in the bat fight in the second episode, but it's not the same.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And again, it's that underlying horror of what could happen that makes it effective. And of course, it's the seeing it all and it all being over the top is what makes it work. But I agree that is a good one.
Of course, Robin goes through about a quarter of it, and it doesn't seem to do anything to him as he's laying on the conveyor belt.
Yeah, exactly.
So what is your final one?
Well, I'm going to cheat here a little bit because I have kind of the traps are some of my all-time favorite elements of the show. So it's really hard to center it on three. Right. I mean, as a kid with my Migos, that was always one of the best parts, is that I would sometimes leave them overnight in the trap, kind of the idea, try to emulate the idea of the show where it leaves you on one day and then the next day they'd have to get out of it. I'm not a sadist, I promise you, but it was just kind of fun of playing with my Migos. But what I'm going to mention first is in the late second season, which is, and I'll talk more about it in a different episode that we're doing here, the pop art episode where they have the mobile, where it's, and I don't know why I always like the idea when one of them was in a secret identity and the other one was in costume. I always like that dynamic, pardon the pun. But you've got Bruce Wayne tied to a chair and Robin is on this mobile that the Joker has built. And again, it's using that music that I mentioned earlier. And you've got all these flying knives, and you've got these Salvador Dali style, symbols for the playing cards in the background, and all of this swirling motion, and Robin is spinning around. It's really visually striking. When you think about it too much, you're trying to figure out how would this thing actually work, but you get away from it very quickly, and it's really, really effective. The clam in the three-parter is brilliant, and then you see Robin get swallowed by the clam, and you see his foot, and it's just jerking, and he's just, and it just, that image of this gigantic clam cracks me up, and Terry Moore's just horror, oh my God, how horrible. I love it. But also from earlier in that episode, this is where my cheat comes in, is the gigantic meteor, where they're tied down and the meteor is about to drop on them, and the thermite flare or whatever it is spinning around, and if it hits the rope, it's going to drop on them, and they get out just in time. That's another one of those traps that I think is tremendous. But there are others too. I mean, I love when Bruce Wayne is on the conveyor belt about to go into the fire in the first Penguin episode. And again, because it's Bruce Wayne, you think that he's, what can he possibly do to get out of this? He's not even Batman here, and stuff like that I thought were great. But those are the ones that readily come to mind that I always go back to. That I think they're great.
Well, there you have it, folks. I mean, a nice bunch of bat traps that...
Oh, wait, one more.
One more.
When they're going to be turned into Freezy Frosties. I love that.
Do you remember the flavors?
A lime one and a pineapple one, I think.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah. So, what are your favorite bat traps? What are you looking forward to seeing Batman and Robin get out of as these DVDs and Blu-rays are going to be released next Tuesday? Let us know over at the Batcavepodcast.com and 13thdimension.com or over at our respective Facebook pages. We're going to have links for all those in the show notes as we release these episodes on our websites. Now, before we wrap up here, though, we've got to choose a new winner for today's prize. The double book set there, a font of Batman information and commentary for you to read through. And I'm reaching into the Bat Drum right now, and our winner today is Stephanie Besco of San Diego, California.
Congratulations. You've got two really, really good books. The 14 Miles to Gotham, that was edited by Jim Beard and put together by Jim, is absolutely terrific and essential reading for any Batman 66 fan. And you've got Bob Greenberger's encyclopedia, which is basically an updated version of the old encyclopedia that came out in the 70s. And also, it's a great, just general Batman information. It's also indispensable and a great book to have.
And Jim's going to be putting together for future publication a sequel to Gotham City 14 Miles. So, keep an eye out for that as well. So that's going to do it then for this episode of the Batcave podcast. Tune in tomorrow when Dan and I are going to be talking about the best Bat moments. When did Adam West truly shine? I mean, there was a lot of moments where he did shine. Or where did we love Alfred to pieces? Or was there a particular Bat villain that just really stole the show? We're going to be talking about that on the next episode. And make sure that you're heading over to our web pages, thebatcavepodcast.com and
13thdimension.com. 13th dimension.com.
So until next time, citizens, thanks so much for listening. Dan, thanks again for being here.
Thanks, John. Having a blast.
Take care, chums. Thanks for listening, chums. I don't have a bat phone, but you can contact the Batcave podcast through its Facebook page, Twitter, email at thebatcavepodcast@gmail.com, or by phone at 888-866-9010. Subscribe to the podcast via Libsyn.com, that's Libsyn.com, or through iTunes. The Batcave Podcast is part of a series of pop culture podcasts from the Chronic Rift Network. Find them at chronicrift.com. So until next time, citizens, same bat time, same Batcave Podcast.